Good evening, my fellow citizens of the world, and especially the people of India, a rising democracy with an ancient soul. Today, I come not as a symbol of the past, but as a voice for our shared future, a future where hope, not fear, guides our steps, a future where progress is not a promise but a partnership. My friends, every nation comes to a point in its journey where it must decide not just where it wants to go, but who it wants to be. And right now, India finds itself at such a moment. For centuries, this land has been a place of innovation, faith, and resilience. Its people have endured trials, risen from setbacks, and carved out a democracy that is not only vast but vibrant. But today, India stands at a crossroads where the choices made will determine not just the trajectory of its economy, but the soul of its society. We know that India's progress over the last few decades has been remarkable. From villages gaining access to electricity for the first time, to young entrepreneurs building global companies out of modest beginnings, to scientists sending missions to the far reaches of space, this is a story that inspires. It's a story of confidence of a people saying, we can do this, we can build our own future, and yet, as with every success, new challenges arrive. The question is not whether India has the capacity to grow. The question is whether that growth can be sustained, whether it can be inclusive, and whether it can be protected against forces that threaten to undermine it. Across the globe, nations are confronting rapid changes, climate shifts, economic shocks, political instability. India is not immune. Rising inequality, strained resources, and regional tensions test the resilience of a country that must hold together the hopes of more than 1 billion citizens. We also see the pressures of modernization colliding with tradition. There is enormous pride in India's cultural heritage, and rightly so. But alongside that pride, there is a pressing need to build institutions that meet the demands of a digital, interconnected world. The jobs of tomorrow will not be the jobs of the past. They will require new skills, new investments in education, and a willingness to innovate, not just in technology, but in how communities govern themselves, how they lift up the poor, and how they give voice to the marginalized. And we can't ignore the external challenges. When neighbors dispute borders, when outside powers seek to draw India into conflicts not of its choosing, when global supply chains are tested by crisis, the choices made in New Delhi ripple far beyond its borders. The decision to pursue dialogue or confrontation, to embrace openness or retreat into isolation, will affect not only India's security but also the stability of Asia and the world. Now, none of this is easy. The temptation in moments of uncertainty is always to look inward, to guard what you have, to shut out the unfamiliar. But history teaches us that great nations are defined not by fear, but by how they rise to meet the challenges of their time. India has been called the world's largest democracy, but its real strength lies in the daily acts of its people, farmers who adapt to new conditions, students who push boundaries in science and literature, citizens who demand accountability from their leaders. That's where resilience comes from. So the crossroads before India is not a question of whether to move forward. It will move forward because history does not stand still. The question is how. Will progress be narrow, benefiting the few, or will it reach the many? Will power be used to divide or to unite? Will India's rise be seen as a beacon to others or as a fortress to itself? The world is watching, not because India is at risk of failing, but because India has the potential to lead, and leadership, true leadership, requires more than ambition. It requires courage. It requires integrity. It requires a vision that does not waver when the road gets tough. My faith is that India, with its rich history and its restless spirit, will find a way to choose the path that honors both its past and its future. Because at this crossroads, the stakes are too high for anything less. My friends, whenever a nation rises on the world stage, it is tested not only by the opportunities it creates, but by the burdens it must carry. India has seen extraordinary growth in the past generation, tens of millions lifted out of poverty, new industries fueling innovation, young people shaping the global conversation in science and technology and culture. But progress alone is not enough. The test of leadership is whether that progress can be sustained, secured, and shared. That's the real challenge of our time. Economic growth, no matter how impressive, can be fragile if it stands on shaky foundations. We've seen around the world how rapid expansion can leave behind deep inequalities, how prosperity at the top doesn't always reach the villages, the farmers, the workers who keep a nation running. For India, the task is not just to expand GDP, but to make sure that expansion carries everyone forward. That means investing in schools where every child has the chance to learn. It means infrastructure that connects rural communities to the cities where opportunity thrives. It means making sure the digital revolution is not just for the few with access, but for the millions who deserve a voice in the 21st century economy. But growth cannot be separated from security. A rising nation will inevitably face tests, some from within, others from beyond its borders. We know the threats: terrorism that seeks to destroy rather than build, cyber attacks that target the engines of commerce, disputes that can ignite along lines drawn generations ago. For India, the responsibility is twofold: to protect its people while ensuring that the tools of security do not erode the very freedoms that give the nation its character. A strong military, a vigilant intelligence service, and resilient institutions of law are all vital. But true security also comes from trust. Trust between communities, between citizens and their government, and between nations that choose cooperation over conflict. Diplomacy is where growth and security meet. No nation, no matter how powerful, can solve the world's problems alone. The future depends on whether rising powers choose to isolate themselves or engage with others in pursuit of common goals. India has an opportunity and a responsibility to lead, not by seeking domination, but by setting an example of partnership. From tackling climate change to ensuring fair trade, from protecting the seas to preventing the spread of nuclear weapons, the choices made in New Delhi reverberate far beyond its borders. And here's the truth: leadership is not just about protecting your own interests, it's about building a world where everyone's interests are respected. When India invests in renewable energy, it not only strengthens its economy, it helps safeguard the planet. When it works with neighbors to reduce tensions, it not only secures its own borders, it builds a foundation for regional peace. When it champions democratic values abroad, it not only reflects its own story, it gives hope to those still fighting for freedom. Now, none of this is easy. Balancing growth, security, and diplomacy requires hard choices. It requires the discipline to prioritize long-term stability over short-term gain. It requires the humility to listen to others and the courage to stand firm when principles are at stake. And it requires a vision that sees beyond today's headlines to tomorrow's possibilities. But if there is one nation that embodies resilience and reinvention, it is India, a country that has absorbed countless traditions, languages, and faiths, and still found unity, a democracy that has been tested again and again, and still endured. That is the spirit India must bring to this moment, because the path ahead will not be written by chance. It will be written by the choices made today. Choices about how to grow, how to secure, how to engage. Choices that can turn risk into resilience and potential into promise. My friends, democracy is not a gift that is handed down from generation to generation without effort. It is not something that survives simply because it has endured in the past. Democracy is a living thing. It breathes with every election, every debate, every act of protest or petition. And like anything living, it must be cared for, nurtured, and defended, especially in times of stress. Around the world, we've seen how fragile democratic institutions can be when faced with division, when confronted by fear, or when tempted by the false promise of strongmen who say that only they can solve our problems. In those moments, people forget that democracy's power lies not in one individual, but in the collective will of the people. For India, a nation of unmatched diversity, this truth is even more vital. The strength of this republic has always come from its ability to hold together communities of different faiths, languages, and traditions. That unity has never been inevitable, it has always been a choice, and yet moments of tension test that choice. When communities feel excluded, when dissent is silenced, when laws are used not to empower citizens but to restrict them, the foundation of democracy begins to crack. We must remember that democracy is not just about casting a ballot. It is about creating space for every voice to be heard, even those we may disagree with. It is about ensuring that the press can question leaders, that courts can act without fear or favor, that citizens can protest without being silenced. Those freedoms are not signs of weakness, they are the very proof of strength. In times of stress, there will always be those who say freedom is a luxury, that order must come before liberty, that unity requires uniformity. But history teaches us something different. It tells us that societies which close themselves off, which sacrifice liberty for the illusion of stability, eventually weaken from within. True unity does not come from forcing everyone to think the same. It comes from allowing people to live with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or where they come from. We also know that democracy must adapt to survive. In an age of technology, disinformation spreads faster than truth. In an age of global markets, inequality can breed resentment. In an age of security threats, fear can make us suspicious of our neighbors. These are the pressures of modern life, and they can erode trust if we are not careful. But adaptation does not mean abandoning principle. It means doubling down on transparency. It means strengthening institutions. It means teaching the next generation not just the mechanics of democracy, but the spirit of it, the belief that every person matters. And let's be honest, democracy is messy, it is loud, it is frustrating, it is slow. It does not promise perfection. But that messiness is also its genius, because when power is shared, when accountability is real, when people feel they have a stake in their future, nations endure. When democracy is alive, it gives hope not only to its own citizens, but to people everywhere who yearn for freedom. So, in this moment of tension, the question is not whether democracy will survive. The question is whether citizens will defend it, whether leaders will respect it, whether societies will choose inclusion over division, accountability over corruption, truth over propaganda. The answer to that question will determine not just the future of one country, but the credibility of democracy itself in the 21st century. And here is what I believe the people of India, with their long history of resilience, will rise to that challenge, because they know that democracy, while imperfect, remains humanity's greatest instrument for justice and progress. And when tested, when placed under strain, democracy has a way of renewing itself, so long as those who believe in it are willing to stand up, speak out, and hold it together. My friends, in the 21st century, no nation can claim to walk alone. Our economies are linked, our security is tied together, and the challenges we face, from climate change to pandemics, from terrorism to the spread of technology, do not stop at borders. They demand cooperation, imagination, and a sense of shared responsibility. And in this interconnected world, India has both the opportunity and the obligation to play a leading role. For decades, the global story has been written by the movements of power across continents. But today, more and more eyes turn to the East, to Asia, and within Asia to India, a nation of more than 1 billion, home to one of the fastest growing economies, a country rooted in ancient traditions but looking firmly toward the future. That is not just a regional player, that is a global force, and with that force comes expectation. The world does not just ask what India will do for itself, but what it will do for the common good. We know that leadership is not defined by size alone. It's not just about the number of soldiers you command, or the size of your economy, or the reach of your markets. Leadership is measured by the values you project, the partnerships you build, and the example you set. India has long spoken of unity and diversity. That principle, lived out daily by its citizens, offers a powerful message to a world fractured by identity and divided by mistrust. If India can show that democracy and diversity are not barriers to progress, but engines of it, then it does more than elevate its own people. It inspires others. On issues that shape the future of humanity, India cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. Climate change is one of them. The choices made in New Delhi about energy, about sustainability, about stewardship of land and water will ripple across the planet. When India invests in solar power, when it commits to reducing emissions, when it protects the Ganges and the Himalayas, it tells the world we are not just beneficiaries of global resources, we are stewards of them. And that example has the power to move others toward action. The same is true for trade and technology. India's entrepreneurs, its engineers, its digital pioneers have already reshaped industries. But as innovation accelerates, India will face a choice to build walls around its markets or to champion a fair and open system that allows ideas and opportunity to flow across borders. The latter is harder. It requires trust. It requires regulation that is transparent and fair. It requires a commitment to raising standards for workers and protecting rights for consumers. But if India can lead in building that fair system, then billions of people, far beyond its shores, will benefit. And finally, let us not forget peace and security. Regional tensions will remain, old disputes will flare, but great nations do not let the weight of history prevent the possibility of progress. Leadership means sometimes having the courage to seek dialogue where mistrust lingers, to build bridges where others see only walls, to act not simply for short-term advantage but for long-term stability. If India, with its moral authority and growing influence, can act as a voice for restraint, for cooperation, for the dignity of every human being, then its leadership will extend far beyond any military exercise or economic deal. So the role of India in this interconnected world is not preordained. It is a choice to lead with vision, to lead with values, to lead not only for the prosperity of its own citizens, but for the well-being of all humanity. And when nations make that choice, when they embrace responsibility as well as power, they do more than shape their own destiny. They help bend the arc of history toward justice, toward peace, toward progress. That is the role waiting for India if it chooses to claim it. My friends, no relationship in the world's future will matter more than the ones built on trust, shared values, and a common vision for humanity. For decades, the United States and India have walked separate paths, shaped by different histories, shaped by different struggles. But again and again, those paths have converged. And today, at this moment in history, the chance to shape a shared future is not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility. Both of our nations are vast and diverse, defined not by a single faith or culture, but by the idea that many can live as one. Both are democracies where debate is often messy, where progress can be slow, but where liberty endures because citizens demand it. That shared spirit gives us something powerful. The understanding that freedom is worth fighting for, that equality must be pursued, that justice requires vigilance. And it gives us the foundation to build something bigger than ourselves. The challenges we face will not be solved by one nation acting alone. Climate change will not respect borders. Terrorism does not carry a passport. Pandemics do not wait for visas. And in a global economy, the prosperity of one region inevitably affects another. That is why this partnership matters. Because together, we can shape not only the direction of our own nations, but the course of the world. Think about what collaboration already makes possible. American companies and Indian innovators are working side by side to advance clean energy, to make healthcare more affordable, to expand digital access. Students cross oceans to study in each other's universities, carrying back not only knowledge but friendships, perspectives, and bonds that last a lifetime. Our militaries train together not simply to deter conflict, but to preserve peace. These are not abstract connections, they are tangible ties that strengthen both of our peoples. But there is more to do. The United States must continue to see India not just as a partner of convenience, but as a partner of consequence. And India, in turn, must embrace the responsibility that comes with leadership on the world stage. That means building trade relationships that are fair and beneficial to workers on both sides. It means addressing climate change with the urgency it demands. It means standing together to defend democratic values when they are under threat, whether at home or abroad. Now, let's be honest. Our nations will not agree on everything. That's the nature of democracy. That's the nature of sovereign countries. But disagreement does not have to mean division. If the foundation is strong, if the trust is there, then differences become opportunities for dialogue rather than causes for rupture. That's what makes a partnership resilient. And there is something else we share, a belief that the next generation deserves better. The young people of India and the United States, connected through technology, inspired by possibility, are already thinking beyond old divisions. They are asking not how the world was, but how it ought to be. They want clean air and safe streets, equal opportunity and dignity for every person. If we can empower them, if we can give them the tools, the education, the support to lead, then the future of this partnership will be brighter than anything we have seen. So the promise of this relationship is not simply about what governments sign or what leaders declare. It's about the millions of ties that bind our people, the millions of stories that link our families, our businesses, our dreams. That is what will carry us forward. And if we seize this moment, if we deepen cooperation, if we live up to our shared ideals, then together we will show the world that democracy and diversity are not weaknesses to be managed, but strengths to be celebrated. Together, we can prove that progress is not a zero-sum game. Together, we can build a future worthy of our children. So tonight,